elevation. We hunt and we hungry, we salivating, turning nothing to something and celebrating. Market's changing, we calibrating. The first to get acclimated is the first to stack the payments, but you need to act with patience, but be careful waiting, cause this opportunity won't last forever before it is evaporated. So if you wanna flip some houses, hit me up to make a plan. Your flip deserves the upper hand.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Raising the Flipping Bar. I'm your host, Derek Marlin, and looking forward to spending some time with you guys today on one of our deal analysis episodes. This is a format that we will do at a minimum quarterly, maybe even a little bit more. And we want to feature and highlight different styles of flips and property redevelopments, as we call it, so we can give you a good flavor of simple cosmetic projects. The classic, what we're going to talk about today is what we call a double, and then hopefully the occasional home run from time to time. So let's jump right into today's episode. This is a really good story because it is a great family home that got brought back to life. And I'll give you kind of some of the backstory. And the way that we got this deal was actually, it was a referral from a client that we had done some business with, gosh, almost 5 years ago now. And just to kind of set the stage, and this to me shows you that you have to have great relationships with real estate agents. I know we do a lot of off-market sourcing. We're doing cold calling. People are doing direct mail pieces. They're doing, pay-per-click. But to me, also a huge piece of what we try to do from finding deals is just to have great relationships with real estate agents. And so the agent that we worked with on one of our Englewood flips, which was actually our record to date, where we bought a hoarder house and we had to actually do 14 full-size roll-offs to get this property cleared out. The person who represented the seller was a great real estate agent. He's been an investor for a long time. I think he's been in the business almost 30 years. Super sharp guy, Rick. And he was able to actually refer to us one of his good friends. And the reason why is if it would have been just a traditional listing, I'm sure the client would have just obviously gone with him. But the house needed a lot of love. And so we thought, hey, let me call up Elevation. We haven't done business in 4 years, but I'm sure they're still buying. And we, of course, love to receive the phone call and went straight down the road in working with the family, and then kept Rick, the agent, updated. And also just paid him a referral fee. Again, when people bring us opportunities, we want to reciprocate and we want people to bring us deals. So the great thing about this one is the family had owned the house for, gosh, I believe almost 40 years. Kind of that classic great bones, but definitely had fallen into some disrepair. And so just an amazing family that we work with. The son-in-law, Doug, just a fantastic human being in every sense of the word. It was really great. He actually played football at CSU. So he was giving Travis, our project manager, a huge CU Buffs fan, a really hard time. So it was kind of fun throughout the process. But let's kind of keep with the football analogy, actually, is he was a great quarterback for the family. And so this is what happens a lot of time in a lot of our deals, where you have father-in-law is the homeowner. Father-in-law was moved into assisted living. And then, kind of very financially savvy son-in-law is the person kind of running point for his wife, who's a sibling and kind of an heir, if you will, to the house, and then 2 other siblings as well. So Doug just did a great job. He's, was in a tough spot, but handled it really, really well. And we went to close, but it was another thing that we really learned a lot about is probate. Sadly, Doug's father-in-law passed away a week before we were set to close on the property. So even though it was just a normal, 15-day timeline or whatever from when we finally went under contract, because we wanted to do all of our due diligence beforehand to make sure that everything was taken care of. And sadly, the seller passed away. So because the title wasn't properly handled and things weren't done from an estate planning perspective, which probably should be a whole separate episode, it took another 45 days for the estate to be handled, for probate to be completed, and for title to be properly passed on so that we could purchase the property. So it was something that, had it gone longer than that, we would have actually probably had to reevaluate what our offer price was. And the reason we didn't in this respect is that we purchased the property in late fall and we'd already planned on selling it in the spring. So we didn't see that as a big deal. But something I'd be really sensitive about is if I was buying a property now in the summer and I wanted to have it back on the market in the early fall, but then that kicks me 60 days down the road and I'm not listing something till November or December, that's a big difference. And so we would probably have to change the price. And I think any investor would as well. So let's kind of talk about we've laid out the foundation of how we came across this deal, off-market deal, referral from a real estate agent, paid a referral fee and took great care of the family. Let's talk about the deal itself. And with this episode, it's going to be fun because we're going to do the deal analysis. I'm going to walk you through how the project went and walk you through the numbers, but then we'll also have links in the show notes. We'll have the before pictures, we'll have the after pictures of the listing, and then we will also have the deal analysis spreadsheet. So you'll be definitely hearing me walk through this, but also be kind of fun for you guys to see what it looks like from, kind of the spreadsheet point of view. So this property address was 6676 Zhang Street in Arvada. Arvada is awesome. It's a suburb of northern Denver, and it's been one where we've done a handful of projects, and anytime we can get into Arvada is usually a deal that we jump at. It goes really, really well. They've got great school districts. It's very close to the mountains. I personally live in Centennial, which is a southern suburb, and it's a good 40-minute difference of me getting to the mountains versus people that are living in Arvada. And so great property, great opportunity. From a stylistic perspective, we deviated a little bit from our norm. And that's because this was a 1972 bi-level. And from a style perspective, bi-level means essentially you walk in the front door and you kind of have to have your choice of, do I walk up some stairs to get to the main level / kitchen room, or I should say living room, kitchen, family room, and bedrooms, or do I walk down some stairs to get to secondary living rooms? In this instance, it's a garden level basement, which means the basement windows have a lot more light and are a lot larger than your traditional small basement windows. And we normally don't do those because they're not quite as desirable. Definitely pro tip and flip tip for you right here. When you are doing comps and running your property of what can you sell it for versus what are other properties selling for, ideally you need to find other buy levels. That's your best case scenario. If you can't find other buy levels that have sold, we definitely take the after repair value or the ARV down. So let's just use kind of some numbers, thinking that this is a buy level and we didn't see any other buy levels selling. We might sell this house for 600 when we're seeing comps for between 625, 635 of, let's say, traditional ranches or Victorian properties, or definitely mid-century moderns. Those go for a premium as well. So got to be really careful on comps. But with this one, it was awesome because even though it was a buy level, it felt very open, and you'll be able to see in the pictures. And so you didn't kind of come onto this teeny little landing and feel like you were in a tunnel. You could walk down to 2 secondary living spaces that we ripped out the railing and put in this really neat metal mid-century modern feel railing. And then we did the same thing for the upper level. So even though it was a buy level, it felt super open. And that's actually the feedback that we got from all of our showings. So that was awesome. We went with the mid-century modern fixture and finish package. The house itself wasn't classic mid-century modern, but it was close enough. And like I said earlier, you get a premium for those. So from a fixture and finish standpoint, we chose kind of in our world option number 5 because we've got 6 different levels of how we finish out properties. We went with that mid-mod fashion, and that really worked out really, really well. Project management wise, it was a full gut rehab. We did every major system except the roof. Everything else kind of needed to be, well, actually the boiler was okay. So the heating system was okay and the roof was okay, but we really did everything else. And this was kind of a fun one because we started it just before the turn of the year, and then we listed it in late February. And so we use this as one of our reasons to update our fixture and finish package. So all of our current consulting clients and our Elevation Academy clients have this new updated fixture and finish package. And again, it's not my personal taste. I actually probably wouldn't have selected these colors. The good news is I keep my mouth shut because my wife is our interior designer. But in all seriousness, we got great feedback. And so again, it's all about what does the market want? And so we actually use this as our kind of base color package when we updated our 2025 fixture and finish selections. And so to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the design aspect, because right now we're sitting here in August and, there's tens of thousands of homes on the market for sale. And so you really have to stick out. And so one of the things we did on this one is it kind of complemented the design aspect, and it was a really cost-efficient way to do it, is we did 2 different accent walls, and we used the shiplap product, which a lot of you guys know from, our prior episodes of, Chip and Joanna Gaines, if you will, and doing the fixer-upper and the farmhouse style. You can also have that in more of a mid-century modern look, and you do the pattern, which is called a chevron pattern. And so chevron is, again, kind of a cool thing that was used during mid-mod times. And we painted that a unique accent color. Another one that we did on this one is we painted the doors and the door casing, which is the trim right around the doors. We painted that an accent color as well. So we went light, a very light white on the walls, but we used this really neat green accent color, which we'll have in the show notes. And that turned out really, really well. And this was a cool house in addition that it wasn't a ton of square footage. It was only, I believe, 2,400 square feet, but we still were able to have a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. So again, kind of great value, great bang for the buck. There were two bedrooms in the home on the main floor so that you could have, mom and dad and younger kiddos being on the same floor. Then you had, when you go downstairs, there was a great kind of dual living space. They actually had it, which is classically probably how it was built in the 70s, a really cool, pool table room. And then kind of this step down, again, felt very 70s, a little Hugh Hefner, a little grotto-esque, especially with the shag carpet that we took out. But it was a cool secondary living space. And so it felt super open. So you could pack a lot of people. You could send, I've got teenagers, like you could send them downstairs to watch a movie. And then there was 2 bedrooms on the garden level basement floor as well. And then they had a sweet covered patio too. So again, all these things kind of line up that in a similar price point, this house had a lot of amenities that buyers were looking for, and we won't spoiler alert the end result, but it did go well. And then it had an attached 2-car garage. Kind of, again, wanted to kind of frame out what the design aspect was of this project. And so, as we now kind of dive into the project management aspect of this flip, it's definitely sensitive times right now because their contractor prices are still high. Things have not come down. We're obviously still all trying to figure out the whole tariff situation and what the heck's going to go on there from a material perspective. I think a lot of contractors, laborers are flaking out. So it's hard for them to find good help. So to make it worth it, like prices have leveled off for sales prices, rehab costs, those have not. So just kind of word of the wise, we're still trying to do our best to stay on top of everything and be pertinent with prices. So the style of how we ran this project is kind of where I'm going with this, that Travis, our senior project manager, he ran this as essentially the general contractor. And by that, I mean, he managed about 6 or 7 key subcontractors to get the job done. There was definitely not profit margin in there to hire some of our higher end general contractors because we just didn't have that extra profit margin. And it was a fairly straightforward project. Even though it was a full kind of gut remodel, we weren't moving a ton of walls. We weren't needing architectural designs. And so with that, Travis was running what we call kind of the main person, meaning the carpenter who does about 65% of the work. And then he was subbing out. So he was, overseeing the electrician, overseeing the HVAC, overseeing the kitchen countertop type of person. And that really helped keep our costs in line. So our initial total rehab budget when we purchased the property was $125,500. And then we, on this one is kind of straightforward. We had a 10% contingency. So roughly a $12,500 contingency. And when all was said and done, how did we do? How did the rehab end up coming out? So I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I don't fumble these numbers. The total cost was $135,000. So point being on this one is we used 82% of our contingency. So again, 12.5K contingency. We used about just over 10 grand of that. And half of it was stuff that we opened up the walls and things that you can't foresee, which is why you want your contingency. So about 5 or 6 grand. But then there was about 5 or 6,000 bucks, probably closer to 5, of what we call selective change orders, meaning it's not, opening up a wall and finding a leak. You got to obviously fix the leak. We just saw the Arvada market remaining really healthy. From a sales price point perspective, we saw inventory slowly creeping up. At this point, we didn't, really know that there'd be a hell of a lot more homes on the market. So we thought we got to make this thing a little bit nicer. So we went a little nicer on the fixture and finish. We did 1 extra accent wall and we did a little bit more landscaping than we would have done because, again, we were planning on selling the house, even though we sold it in the winter. It happened to be decent weather. And so it's not like everything was covered with snow. So again, half kind of forced change orders and half selective change orders, if you will. Let's talk about the permitting process. So on this one, it's another way that A, we were able to keep costs in line, and then B, we were able to still deliver a good product, but not go over the top from a permitting perspective. And so by that, I mean, we were able to do 3 different trade permits. So instead of pulling a whole house permit, meaning you have really a general contractor that needs to run the project, and then there are inspectors coming in for probably between, 6 to 12 different sign-offs to make sure everything is done properly. Again, it was like old kitchen out, new kitchen in, old bathroom out, new bathroom in, same areas. We weren't moving things around. So the 3 things we had to do is we needed a new electrical panel. So we pulled a permit for that. And that was just based under the electrician. He manages that. The city comes out, makes sure the work is done properly. They sign off on it. We're good to go. And then we also did a sewer line. We had to do a full replacement on this one because the sewer line was shot. So the sewer contractor pulled that permit. You probably increased the cost on the project by a couple $100. Arvada just increased their sewer permitting significantly. So the normal cost would be, a couple $100, $300 or $400. And if memory serves, I know this was kind of a funky one that probably why we started to dip into contingency. I think it was triple. I think it was like $1,500 for the city of Arvada. And we had done one probably 6 months ago, and that was not the case. So again, you think you've got costs under control. Maybe the contractor hasn't done a sewer in Arvada in a little while, and you go to file and literally you can't fight City Hall, and you're paying triple for the permit. So that cost just gets passed along to us. So those 2 things were super, super helpful rather than doing a whole house permit. And then from a timeline perspective, it took 4.5 months. I think we could have gotten it done a little bit quicker, but like I said, 2 factors came into it. One is we were working on it over the holidays. So as much as you want to assume people are going to work, 24/7 other than Christmas Day and New Year's Day, the reality is that's not the case. We hit a couple of really cold days, so I know that delayed our sewer install. You can't dig in the ground when it's completely frozen, which doesn't happen a ton in Colorado, but it's something we obviously have to factor in. So I think that definitely probably cost us a couple weeks, but overall we were still on time. And luckily we were kind of barely on budget. But the city of Arvada in general was really good to deal with. I hate to throw somebody on the bus, but man, when we have options, we go with the outlying cities and municipalities versus full permits through the city of Denver. Denver just has a lot of work to do and a lot of things to figure out from a permitting process. And so that just made it, again, a no-brainer of why we took this deal down. Let's now talk about the exit strategy. So on the exit strategy, it was great because, again, we went mid-century modern on design. So we knew that would be very, very appealing to the vast majority of the buying audience. The sales price point was just above median home price. So we listed the property for sale for $725,000. When we purchased the property, we underwrote the deal at a $700,000 listing price. We just didn't see comps supporting over 700. So we wanted to be fairly conservative. But the good news is from that extra probate time that moved this thing back, and then the a little bit slower winter work, sold comps came in and actually helped us out. Again, you don't want to push the price in this market just arbitrarily, but when you see data, I think that's really important. The other thing that we are keeping an eye on, again, will come out in August, is what is the active inventory. So yes, even though you have 725 comps, but if you have 10 other amazing properties on the market at 700, you should probably still price it at 700. So it's a funky time right now from a pricing strategy perspective. And the good news is it appealed to a lot of buying demographics. So it appealed to the new family, kind of a more affluent first-time home buyer. It appeared to, or appealed, I should say, to a move-up buyer. So a smaller family who needs more space. It could handle a lot of people. Again, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. And then kind of younger professionals that might be single or might not have kiddos, but you're close to Arvada. They've got a great, downtown. If they're thinking about starting a family, they've got really good school districts. So we kind of went with, again, nicer fixtures and finishes and had kind of that healthy budget. So as we kind of come down the home stretch on this episode, let's talk numbers. Let's talk deal analysis, and then we'll talk about how we funded this and kind of the unique GC flip model that we're doing on some of our projects as well. So from a funding perspective, this was an all cash purchase and it was an all cash rehab allocation. And with that, this is what we actually call now our GC flip. And that is, we've got a couple of high net worth investor clients that actually have true cash. They're not borrowing hard money and they're not borrowing on a line of credit. They want the best possible unlevered return, which means they're not using debt to increase their cash on cash return. And so hands down, one of our favorite clients and easy to work with, which I'll talk about here at the end. So it made the deal more profitable than probably half of our audience who uses hard money. But let me go through the metrics. So our net profit on this one for our client was $468 a day. So again, you guys have been with me for a while. That's your dollars per day metric. It was a $77,259 net profit. So that's again, after everything was paid off, our project management fees, acquisition fee, everything, commissions, closing costs, the whole nine. They still netted just over 77 grand. And it was just under a 12% ROI. So it was 11.75% ROI in 4.5 months. So not annualized, that was just for that project. And again, had he used hard money and maybe put down 20%, again, that's using leverage, it would have been a 63% cash on cash return had he put down 20% of that project. On this one, the purchase price was $471. The rehab ended up being $130. So you're all in for $600. So he would have, essentially put down $120,000 to make 77. So definitely a good return on investment. But again, when you're in a great spot and you've got some great cash to invest, why not make more money? Kind of you be the bank by yourself. And the good thing about it is those numbers included the client paying a $25,000 fee to elevation. And that fee was split between our acquisitions fee since it was off market. So think of that as either a commission, if you will, to find a good deal, and then our project management fee to run every aspect of the project. He funded everything himself. And so to me, the cool thing about this GC flip model that we have as one of our options is not a bad way to make $77,000. We set up a separate checking account for this client so that funds are totally segregated. And then we pay the contractors. He didn't want to mess around with that. Our contractors are happy because they trust us and they know the money's coming from elevation instead of somebody else. And then we just had his credit card on file. So when we did, roughly our 30% of the budget for fixtures and finishes, appliances, countertops, tile, flooring, stuff like that, we put it on his credit card. He could track it easily. He got all the airline miles. Now that I say that out loud, at some point I should just get a monster line of credit and charge it all. But no, we seriously want that to be a benefit to our clients. And then we have an expense tracker that tracks every single, literally to the penny, where every single dollar goes. So that from a CPA or a bookkeeping perspective for our clients, it's simple. We just export that spreadsheet to them and they can handle it however they see fit on their tax side of the equation. And with this client, just such a great guy. He and his wife are phenomenal people, former Wall Street traders and really good real estate investors living in New York. And literally they were in the country of Turkey, I think, for the first half of this project. So he was great. He's like, don't bother me. Travis, our project manager, was doing a great job of just sending emails to say, here's the link to the company cam so you can watch the videos. Here's the expense tracker. And he was living his best life in Turkey. And so it was awesome. So he would check his email maybe once in a while. So not a bad way, again, to travel the world and make a almost 12% return on investment just for one particular project. So again, we handled all the payments for him. That was super, super simple. And we've got that set up and dialed through our relationship with Chase. To me, that's why you want to use a big bank to kind of keep it all simple. So kind of a quick one for a deal analysis. It was, again, just a great one. We underwrote it as a double. And we underwrote it with more of a low $63,000 net profit, but it actually sold for $10,000 over asking. We listed it for $725. It went under contract within 48 hours, which is really fast in this market. We listed it in late February. Really good, strong offer. We had a bunch of showings stacked up through the rest of the weekend, but we didn't want to get greedy. And the other cool thing was they were aggressive, meaning they saw the house on Friday. They wrote an offer and they had an acceptance deadline of Saturday at 10 a.m. So they're smart. They're not going to let a bunch of other showings happen over the weekend and kind of create this bidding war. And so and our client gave us, the green light. He's like, this is super smart. So we sent it to him and he signed the offer and we were under contract. 10K over asking. We were a little bit in the saving zone, if you will, when you add both rehab and contingency to the mix. So we were under on that one. And So again, I think it kind of turned into a triple in our world. If you're going to make around 50 grand, to me, that's kind of a double. If you're getting close to 75 grand, that's a triple. And anytime we can make over $100,000 of net profit, to us, that's kind of your classic home run. And the other fun thing was small world. Again, just be nice and be kind. Don't need to be a pushover, but it's a small world in the real estate world in Denver. And so the buyer's agent was actually a person that my son played football with, and his mom was the agent. So it was kind of crazy. All things being equal, we knew that Denise is a great agent, and she was going to not only do right by her clients, but be super reasonable to negotiate with, and just a true pro. So shout out to Denise as well. And all things being equal, we're going to take a deal. Obviously, you don't want to make less money, but dang, if you're close and you've got a buyer that loves the house, they were trying to get in that neighborhood for a long time, you've got just a badass agent, like that's the one to go with. You want to get that deal closed. Even if it's $1,000 or $2,000, I probably still would have gone with that specific scenario instead of squeezing, every last cent out of it. If it's super inexperienced person, we don't know if they've got true motivation. So again, just a little flip tip there. So kind of as we wrap this up to do final thoughts on our deal analysis episode, I was pumped to get back to this style and this format. This was again underwritten as a double, turned into a triple. And for us, it was a great model where we can do our own company flips with our own company capital. Instead of just doing classic wholesaling, which we still do to our wider client base, we're curating a small group of folks that are have access to true cash and capital, want to be hands off, want to make great returns. We're actually also tapping into it. It'll be a new episode to really help maximize this GC flip, is people borrowing from a self-directed retirement plan. So that is their cash that they've set aside. They can access that and then just supercharge their returns in their retirement plan. So it's something we're doing to do more volume, and then we run everything, and it's kind of the best of both worlds for all of our clients. And then I know for this guy, for Robert and his wife, if we can do 2 projects a year, maybe 3 with his capital, and he can get, between a low 20s and low 30% annualized ROI to go on vacation, like that's not a bad model. So it's been something that's been kind of fun. The more win-win-win situations we can do, obviously the best. So as we wrap up today, thanks for you guys to tuning in to today's episode of Raising the Flipping Bar. Please engage with us on all of our social media. Send me some DMs. Send me some emails, give me a phone call, stop by the Broadway Collective, whatever. It's a funky market. We want to hear how you guys are doing, what you've got going on. We'll be doing more deal analysis. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of this, and we will catch you on the flip side.
Elevation, elevation. Flip that house, man, this money for the making. We gon' get it, hustle harder every day, fam. Sky's the limit, time to make this life amazing.